You wake before dawn to the sound of wooden wheels on stone. Not one cart, hundreds. A low thunder that never stops even at night. The air already smells like smoke and bread and something else you can't name. Sweat maybe, or just density. You step outside and the street swallows you. This is Rome. The year doesn't matter as much as the number, 1 million people. The first city in human history to cross that line. And they're all here, in a space smaller than modern-day Brooklyn, living on top of each other in ways no one had ever tried before. Most of them will never see the Forum. Most of them can't read. But somehow this works. Somehow 1 million people wake up, eat, move, sleep, and do it again tomorrow without the whole thing collapsing. The question is whether Rome was powerful. It's how a city this size didn't tear itself apart every single day. You're in the Subura. It's not the worst neighborhood, but it's not trying to impress anyone either. 5, 6-story apartment blocks, insulae lean against each other like they're holding each other up. Maybe they are. The ground floors are shops, bakeries, taverns, a place that sells garum, that fermented fish sauce Romans put on everything. The smell hits you before you see the jars. Above the shops, people live in wooden compartments stacked on top of each other. No windows, just shutters. No plumbing past the first floor. If you live on the 5th floor, you're carrying your water up and your waist down. Or you're throwing it into the street. Most people throw it into the street. The crowds are already moving. Not walking, moving like a current. You can't stop in the middle of a Roman street during the day. There's no room. Someone will shove you. A cart will nearly crush your foot. The streets weren't designed for this many people because no one had ever planned for this many people. Rome grew faster than anyone could measure, and now it just is. You pass a popina, a food stall built into the wall. The counter is stone, with big clay pots sunk into it, keeping stew and wine warm. A man is eating lentils with his hands. Another is arguing about the price of sausage. There's no kitchen in his apartment. There's no kitchen in most apartments. You don't cook at home in Rome. You buy food twice a day from whoever's nearest. If the Popini closed for a week, half the city would starve. That's the first thing you notice about Rome. Nothing here is self-sufficient. Every system depends on another system. And if one breaks, the whole city feels it by nightfall. You turn toward the Tiber. The river cuts through the city, brownish-green, wide, full of boats. Barges mostly, flat and heavy, carrying grain. Every day, ships from Egypt and North Africa unload wheat at Ostia, Rome's port city, 16 miles downstream. From there, it's barged upriver and stored in massive warehouses near the Aventine Hill. This is the grain dole, the annona. At its peak, the emperor gives free grain to around 200,000 men, heads of households, citizens. It's not charity, it's control. You can't have 1 million people in one city and expect them to quietly go hungry when the market price spikes. So the emperor buys the grain, stores the grain, and hands it out, every month. No exceptions. If a shipment is late, if storms delay the fleet, or the Nile floods poorly, or a governor in Egypt decides to skim a little off the top, you feel it here. In the streets. In the way people start gathering in the Forum, louder than usual, looking toward the Palatine Hill where the emperor lives. Rome doesn't riot often, but when it does, it starts with bread. You keep walking. The Tiber smells worse the closer you get. It's not just a river, it's a sewer, a shipping lane, a boundary, and a dump, all at once. There are public latrines built right over it in some places. Wooden seats, rows of them, no partitions. You sit next to strangers and do your business while the water flows underneath and carries it all downstream. It's efficient. It's also the reason you don't drink from the river. So where does the water come from? You look up. If you're standing in the right part of the city, you'll see it. An aqueduct, stone arches marching across the skyline like a frozen parade. There are 11 of them feeding Rome by the 2nd century. They start in the mountains, 30, 40, even 50 miles away, and they fall, just slightly. A gradient so subtle you never notice it on foot. But over miles and miles, that little drop is enough to pull millions of gallons of water downhill into the city every single day. The aqueducts don't pump. They don't need engines. They just fall forever in straight lines and gentle curves until they reach the city walls. Then the water splits. Some goes to the public baths, some to the fountains. A little to private homes if you're rich enough to pay for a tap. Most of it goes to the fountains. There's a fountain in almost every neighborhood. Free, always running, always cold. You bring a jug, you fill it, you carry it home. If you're on the 5th floor of an insula, you carry it 5 floors. Twice a day, probably. Roman life is full of little tasks like this. Things that don't sound hard until you realize you do them every day forever, and there's no way around it. The baths, though, that's where the water gets interesting. You're in the baths of Trajan now, or maybe Caracalla, depending on the century. It doesn't matter, they're all huge. The baths of Caracalla could hold 1,600 people at once, not across a day at the same time. You pay a tiny fee, sometimes nothing. You walk through the cold room, the warm room, the hot room. There are pools, steam, people scraping oil and dirt off their skin with curved metal tools called strigils. Slaves carry towels. In the corners, people are getting massages, having their hair cut, placing bets, selling things, arguing about chariot teams. It's not just about being clean. It's about being Roman. You come here because everyone comes here. Because this is where you see people, hear news, make deals, waste time. The baths are the closest thing Rome has to a social network, and they're open to almost everyone. But the scale, here's what gets me, the scale only works because the water never stops. The aqueducts feed the baths drain into the sewers drain into the Tiber. It's a circuit. If the aqueduct breaks, the baths close. If the baths close, people notice. And when people notice in Rome, someone important gets blamed. You're moving south now through the Forum. It's mid-morning. The space is packed. Lawyers, merchants, soldiers back from the provinces. People shouting about votes that don't really matter anymore because the emperor makes the decisions anyway. But they still shout. The buildings around you are marble or faced with marble. Columns everywhere. Temples to gods whose names you've heard but whose stories you've forgotten. The Senate House is here, though the Senate doesn't have the power it used to. The rostra is here, the speaker's platform where politicians once gave speeches that could change the republic. Now it's where the emperor's decrees get read aloud. Everything in the Forum is designed to impress, to remind you that Rome is the center of the world, that the emperors are gods or close enough. That this city, this impossible experiment in density and logistics, is divinely mandated. But if you look past the marble, you see the scaffolding. Someone's always repairing something. Fire damage, mostly. Rome burns. A lot. The insulae are wood and clay and oil lamps and cramped kitchens and no space between buildings. When a fire starts in the Subura, it doesn't stop at one block. In 64 AD, the Great Fire burned for 6 days and destroyed 2/3 of the city. So Rome has firefighters, the vigils, 7,000 men divided into cohorts stationed across the 14 districts. They don't just fight fires, they patrol at night, enforce curfews, break up fights. They're part firemen, part police, part military. And even with 7,000 of them, they can't stop every fire. They just try to keep it from eating the whole city. You're on the Palatine Hill now. The emperors live here in sprawling palace complexes that most Romans will never see the inside of. You can see the hill from almost anywhere in the city. It's a reminder, not aggressive, just there. Constant. From up here you can see how the city spills out in every direction. The Colosseum to the east, the Circus Maximus below you to the south, a long oval track where 150,000 people, 15% of the entire city, can watch chariot races at the same time. That number should sound insane. It is. But it also tells you something. Rome doesn't just manage 1 million people. It entertains them. It gives them free food, free water, free games, bread and circuses. The phrase is older than you think, and it's not a joke. It's policy. Because here's the thing about a city this big, you can't control it with force alone. You can't station a soldier on every corner, so you give people reasons not to riot. You give them grain, you give them water, you give them a day at the races. You make the system feel so abundant, so inevitable, that tearing it down seems worse than living inside it. And most of the time it works. But the scale, it's easy to forget the scale until you see it all at once. 1 million people. In a world where most cities had 20,000, maybe 50,000. Rome had 50 times that. It wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. Not until London in the 1800s. Not until the Industrial Revolution gave cities coal and trains and steel and all the tools to grow past the limits of muscle and water and road. Rome did it with none of that. No trains, no engines, no fossil fuels. Just roads, aqueducts, ships, carts, and an empire stretched across 3 continents, funneling resources into one city because that's where the emperor was. And the emperor was the state, and the state was Rome. Every day, 1,500 tons of grain arrived. Every day, 300 million gallons of water flowed in. Every day, thousands of carts rolled through the streets, legally only at night because the daytime crowds were too thick. Every day the sewers flushed waste into the river, the baths recycled water, the fountains ran, the fires got put out, the grain got distributed, and somehow 1 million people woke up and did it again. It didn't last. Nothing that big ever does. But for a few centuries it worked. And no one who lived through it thought it was temporary. To them, Rome was eternal. The city that couldn't fall because it had always been there and would always be there. They were wrong. But standing here, in the middle of the noise and the smoke and the movement, it's hard not to believe them. It's evening now. The carts are rolling in again. They waited outside the city all day because the law says they can't enter until the sun goes down. The streets are louder at night than you'd think. The workshops are still open. The taverns are filling up. Somewhere, someone's apartment is on fire and the vigils are already running. You head back to the Subura, up 5 flights of stairs. No lantern in the hallway. You feel your way along the wall. Inside, there's a window, no glass, just shutters. And through it you can hear the whole city still moving, still humming, still feeding itself and cleaning itself and entertaining itself like a machine that forgot how to stop. And you think, how long can something like this keep going? Rome didn't know the answer either.